Disclaimer: this video is AI generated for infotainment only. Data sourced from the internet. AI may hallucinate. Verify all facts independently.
10 bills passed by an elected assembly, debated, voted, and sent up for a signature the Constitution treats as little more than a formality. Then nothing. Not a yes. Not a no. Just silence for months. In some cases for years. In April of 2025, the Supreme Court of India did something it had never done before. It started a clock on the one person who would not sign. Then it declared those bills law without him. The office meant to be a rubber stamp had become a roadblock. Whole country found itself asking the same question. Who is this person and where does this power really come from? Chapter 30. The governor. Every state in India runs on the same design as the center, a parliamentary system. Just as the union has its executive, so does each state. At the very top of it sits the governor. On paper, the governor is the chief executive head of the state. But exactly like the president at the center, that is a title, not a job. The governor is a nominal head, a constitutional head. The real power sits somewhere else entirely. Here is the twist that makes this office unlike any other in the country. The governor is not only the head of the state, the governor is also the agent of the central government inside that state. Delhi's eyes sitting in the state capital. One office, two roles, the head of the state and the representative of the center. That single built-in contradiction, that dual role, is the source of almost every conflict this chapter is about. Notice what is missing. There is no vice governor the way there is a vice president at the center. Just the one chair. Usually every state has its own governor. But since a constitutional amendment in 1956, the same individual can be appointed governor of two or more states at once. One person holding the center's brief across an entire region. Over the next few minutes, how this person is chosen, the powers they hold, the rare moments they can act entirely alone, and why this has become the most contested chair in the whole federation. Because the strange thing about this office is this: you don't win it. You are given it. Part 2.
So how do you become a governor?
You are not elected, not by the people, not by any assembly. You are appointed. The President of India signs a warrant under hand and seal, and the office is yours. Because the President acts on the advice of the central government, the governor is in plain terms a nominee of the center, chosen in Delhi, sent to the state. But the Supreme Court was firm about this back in 1979. The governor is not an employee of the central government. It is an independent constitutional office, not a clerk taking orders from Delhi. At least that was the design. It could have been very different. When the constitution was being written, there was a serious proposal on the table to let the people of each state directly elect their own governor. The American model. The framers looked at it and they said no, for reasons that tell you exactly what they wanted this office to be. Elected governor would clash with the elected chief minister, two rival mandates in one state. Election would force the governor into a party, when the entire point was to stand above party. A separately elected governor might feed separatism, a second power base pulling against the center. So they chose the opposite. Appointment from above. Office designed to keep the center's thread running quietly into every state. The bar to hold it is remarkably low. The Constitution asks only two things: that you are a citizen of India and that you have completed 35 years of age. That is all. Later commission tried to add some wisdom to that rule, that a governor should be an eminent figure from outside the state, detached from its local politics, not a party worker simply rewarded with a post. Sound advice. Rarely followed. Then there is the term. 5 years, the Constitution says. But read the very next line, and those 5 years dissolve. The governor holds office during the pleasure of the president. Pleasure. That one word means there is no fixed tenure, no security, and as the court confirmed in 1981, no grounds required and no judge who will second guess it. A governor can be removed at any moment, for any reason. or none. It shows in 1989, a new government in Delhi asked every governor appointed by its predecessor to step down. 2 years later, the next government did the very same, replacing 14 of them in a single sweep. Governors are transferred between states like postings, held, quite literally at Delhi's pleasure. So this is the office appointed from above, removable at will. Which makes the next question the one that really matters. What can it actually do? Part 3. On paper, a governor's powers look almost like a smaller copy of the president's 4 kinds: executive, legislative, financial, and judicial, with 3 crucial subtractions. No diplomatic power, no military power, no emergency powers. Foreign affairs, the armed forces, the great national emergencies, those stay with the center. Start with the executive. Every action of the state government runs formally in the governor's name. The governor appoints the chief minister and the other ministers on the chief minister's advice. In one quiet but potent role, the governor is the chancellor of the state's universities, which is why, as we'll see, a single appointment on a campus can set off a full-blown war. But the power that matters most sits in the legislature. When the state assembly passes a bill, it comes to the governor. Under Article 200, there are 4 things the governor can do with it. Sign it and it becomes law. Withhold assent and it dies. Return it for reconsideration, though if the assembly passes it again, the governor must sign. Or, and this is the one that changes everything, reserve the bill for the president. Send it up to Delhi. That 4th path is the center's door back into a state's own lawmaking. It is the path that has caused the most trouble of all. There's more. When the assembly isn't in session, the governor can issue ordinances, temporary laws under Article 213. Power so tempting that one governor once reissued the same ordinances over and over for years until the court struck the practice down as a fraud on the constitution. The governor can also pardon offenders, but not a death sentence. That power the constitution keeps for the president alone. Now the trapdoor. Almost everything you've just heard, the governor does on the aid and advice of the Chief Minister's Council. The governor is meant to act, not to decide, except in matters of discretion. Here is the difference that defines this office. The President of India, since the 42nd Amendment, must follow ministerial advice. The governor's discretion, by contrast, is written right into the Constitution. There is constitutional discretion, reserving a bill, recommending president's rule. There is situational discretion, choosing a chief minister when no one has a majority, dismissing a ministry that has lost the house, dissolving the assembly itself. That is the instant a rubber stamp becomes a kingmaker or a wrecking ball. Part 4. The office at war. Here is the fault line running under this entire office. The governor is appointed by the center, removable by the center, and serves at its pleasure. Yet that same governor holds discretionary power over a government the people of the state actually elected. Unelected appointee with a hand on the levers of an elected administration. Build an office like that and conflict isn't a risk. It is a certainty. Back in the 1980s, a commission on center-state relations sat down and listed exactly where this office breaks. Choosing a chief minister in a hung assembly. Testing who truly holds the majority. Dismissing a chief minister. Dissolving the house. Recommending president's rule. Reserving a state's bills for Delhi. Wielding the chancellor's chair over the universities. That list was written 4 decades ago. The commission's own verdict was that these issues are continuing and relevant even today. They had no idea how right they would turn out to be. Because in our own time, this office went to war over something as small as a signature. Across several states, governors began sitting on bills passed by elected assemblies, not signing, not returning, just holding them. In 2023, the Supreme Court fired a warning shot, telling one governor in plain words that an unelected head of state cannot use these powers to thwart the normal course of lawmaking. Then came Tamil Nadu. 10 bills held for years, then bounced up to the president. In April of 2025, the court ran out of patience. It ruled the governor had no power to sit on those bills, set hard deadlines, and in an extraordinary move used Article 142 to declare all 10 bills passed assented. Without the governor's signature at all. It was the strongest blow ever struck against a stalling governor. It did not last. The president put a direct question to the Supreme Court: can a court really do this? In November of 2025, 5 judges answered number. No court may impose a deadline on a governor or the president. Passing a bill the governor never signed, what they call deemed assent, is, in their words, alien to the Constitution. But those same judges drew the balance. A governor still cannot sit on a bill forever. Endless silence still breaks the Constitution. The line had moved. It had not disappeared. So where does that leave this office? It was built to be a bridge, a link between the center and the states, holding a vast federation together. Too often it has worked as a tripwire instead. The repairs have sat on the table for years. Give the governor a secure, fixed term, so the pleasure of Delhi stops hanging over every decision. Allow removal only for genuine cause, not for politics. Take the universities out of the governor's hands altogether. Reforms, well known, rarely enacted. So, hold on to 4 things. The governor is the state's nominal head and the center's agent, appointed, not elected, and held at the president's pleasure. Powerful on paper, but bound by advice except in that dangerous zone of discretion. Through all of it, the most contested chair in the federation. But the governor only holds the title. The real power in a state belongs to someone else, the person the governor must appoint, the one who actually runs the government. Next time, chapter 31. The chief minister